Welcome to the Movement Podcast. This show is all about movement, giving you a better idea of how you can optimize the human body to be the best it can be.
You know, I think we're at a point, Gray, where corrective exercise is overprescribed. It's certainly, in my opinion, has gone from a point where nobody even, and we've been on this journey, nobody even used the term corrective exercise. It wasn't even in the nomenclature when we started it. And then, you know, over the course of, say, 25 years we've been doing this, it's now like just part of what everybody does. Okay, you got to do your correctives. You got to do your correctives. And really, going back to our early days, that's not what started the functional movement, I would say, push. For us, anyway. I think that's a big thing for us. We did the FMS as a way simply, are you ready to go into a weight room and exercise safely? And our first thing is protect, not correct. Because we make assumptions that if you got a good workout, you don't really need to do a lot of correctives. But we kind of almost got, I would say, not so much forced, but just pushed into, how do I fix it? How do I fix it? How do I fix it?
Well, I used to have a lot of conversations coming out of school. I'm a PT, I'm a strength coach. People wanted me to listen to stories about the exercises they did and how they worked out, thinking I could glean some degree of information off that. But there's an old saying, you're not what you eat, you're what you digest well enough. And you're not what you exercise, you're how you move well enough. And so no matter what your workout says or what you say about your workout, I'm going to watch you move. And now I either know if you don't have a lot of function in the way you move, you're broken, you're breaking, one or the other. And I've either got to question your lifestyle and self-care or the way you're working out. And it blew me away when you and I hit the lecture tour and we would have fitness professionals, strength coaches come in the room and we would screen them. And there were a lot of assumptions about function. And we had a lot of broken people who had been working out for a long time. And the first order of business is, how do I fix that leg raise? How do I fix that shoulder mobility? How do I fix my deep squat? And I'm like, well, obviously questioning your workout is a very good place to start. Oh, I love my workout. I don't want to change my workout. I'm into kettlebell swings now, or I'm into doing X now, or I really love the CrossFit or the spin class. So I don't want to question my workout. And we're like, you don't have to delete that, but it's that workout, that dedication of time that you're basically using to better yourself is obviously not balanced because we just measured a dysfunctional person. And so, well, what do I do for that? Well, we'd show somebody a corrective. And here's what I want everybody to lean in close and listen to and play it again. I use a corrective to see how plastic you are. So I'll bring two people on stage and one will touch their toes that couldn't, and one's only going to get about halfway there. I'm going to have some people respond really quick. The people that respond quick to a corrective, they're actually working out wrong. They are, because they're carrying a lot of unnecessary tone from probably a workout that stressed them too much in one direction and not enough in the other. And I just exposed an imbalance, but look how quick it washed off of you. Then I got another person who maybe has an underlying health problem. They're not recovered well and they're working out bad. The corrective's not going to change you that much. So I'll use a few correctives on that just so you get to see this small incremental progress in your toe touch, in your leg raise, in your right rotation or whatever you're doing. So people don't understand. I don't put anybody on correctives for 6 weeks unless I'm Gray Cook physical therapist and you just got your ACL reconstructed. I do a corrective to see if you're plastic or how plastic you are. And then I go in and say, get your butt out of the squat rack, quit rounding your back and do single leg deadlifts.
What you just said there, Gray, is some of the things that I have been trying to educate a lot of the trainers on. Well, let's just say we both have for 20 some years is the word corrective means you're correcting something.
Right.
It means something's getting better.
Right.
And I've had the emails and too often the conversations, Lee, I've been doing this for 6 weeks. It's not working. Well, that means it's not a corrective exercise.
Right.
Because you've got to show some improvement really pretty quick, even if it's a week. Because if something is not getting better, what's the worst thing you can do? keep doing the same shit.
Yes.
At some point, and that's what gets overlooked is you've got to try something, see if it moves something see if it improves it. If it doesn't improve it, you got to do something else.
And so many of us do get married to a particular exercise methodology or discipline, a particular way of working out, a particular line of machines, or a particular amount of equipment, or no equipment whatsoever. These are tactics to me. Exercises don't feed you. They don't clothe you, and they don't pay your bills. They're supposed to make you a better version of yourself so you can do all those things and express yourself in a physical way. And so when we show that somebody who is committed to working out is dysfunctional, there's an emotional experience right there, because it's trying to get a blankie or a teddy bear away from a 3-year-old. There is this defense mechanism that comes up. What do you mean I'm working out wrong? Well, if you're wearing out your tires way faster than anybody else, you're probably a bad driver too. You're braking too quick. You're going into turn too fast. You're losing a bunch of rubber. And I want to go back to this thing that inspired me. I'm listening to the Huberman Labs podcast, and a good friend, Pavel Tsetsulin, to me, laid down the handbook of strength training in a little over 2 hours in that podcast. So I know you're not supposed to come to a podcast, and I'm supposed to send you to another one. But I've been listening to Pavel talk about strength as long as I've been listening to myself talk about function. And he is so polished and efficient and effective at talking about how to get strong. And he literally makes a good case for a less is more conditioning model. He can get you strong without getting you hurt, and he can do it without weight, or he can do it with weight. And he goes back to, fundamental research in the 60s and current stuff we know about the mitochondria right now. But Pavel listens to the signals from the neurological system to get his strength training cues. And you and I have tried to train ourselves to listen to the signals of the neurological system to get our functional and movement cues. And the one thing Pavel said, and he quoted me on the podcast and just said, if get mobile, get symmetrical, and get strong. And I completely agree with that, because doing strength exercises with good technique gets you all the stability you need. So you don't have to stop at the stability station. Make sure your mobility is appropriate for the moves you're getting ready to exercise, and make sure your symmetry, the thing that sent you and I on this journey. It wasn't flexibility or weakness that was jacking some people up in military studies. It's the people who are carrying these unnecessary asymmetries left and right due to a, one-dimensional sport or hobby or an injury that was irresponsibly rehab. We're carrying this baggage. And so, clean your house and then get strong is really all we've ever said. And the question from Huberman was, well, how strong? And Pavel said, well, appropriate. If you're a soldier, we already know what appropriate strength is. If you're going to play in the NFL Combine, we know what average is. And if you want to be considered a strong 40-year-old, we already have those stats. And you don't just compare your bench press. You do the whole thing. People find the one attribute they have, and they define their fitness by that. I've done it. We all do it. But when you get washed through 7 movement patterns, or Pavel will have 5 different strength modules, it's pretty hard to pass every one of those. But it's also good to go ahead and accept that failure, take the lesson, because failing a test does not mean you physically lost anything. But if you get an injury or you blow out your back because you got no business deadlifting that much with that bad a pattern or that much weight, or without a program like Pavel's talking about, then that's going to cost you way more time. So we endure a lot of soreness, a lot of injuries, a lot of chasing the exercise of the day, and baked right into most of Pavel's strong first work is, here's how not to get injured while you're getting fit. And most of the people who train with Pavel, the very first time I screened that guy with no background in screening whatsoever, he pulls 20 on a movement screen, and we did one little corrective for his rolling because he had a shoulder thing. He's 21. Now, he didn't even know that standard existed, but that standard personally existed in him, and it probably also personally existed in Bruce Lee and any NFL player that ever had more than 12 years on the field. They know they got to move at a certain level of competency before anything else matters. And we culturally have lost that benchmark. And then when we find out we're below the cut, we're looking for medicine, not behavior modification.
Well, I
Change your
think,
workout.
Even right now, the FMS has been around, and there's a lot of people say, well, I used to do the movement screen. I don't need to do it anymore. I can just watch somebody move and see how they're doing, which is, if you've got that expertise, that's fine. But by making a reliable tool, I can have confidence that everybody is getting the same results. Point being, you've got to first and foremost, and I think this gets overlooked, talking about corrective exercise, who's in pain? And right now, we got the data and says 40 to 50% of the people walking in the door off the street to work out is in pain.
That means their workout is either confronting that pain, which is a danger signal that the body's sending you as a way to not turn dysfunction into harm, right? So there's nothing wrong with pain. I mean, Bruce Lee has an excellent quote.
Pain is there telling you for a reason.
Pain's going to be here till you get the lesson right.
Yeah.
And I think it's good if we accept that. Now, does it mean we can't seek to lower our pain? Yes. But let's not always look for the medicine or the corrective or the supplement. Let's look for the lifestyle modifications and workout modifications and ergonomic modifications that we can make in our lives.
That's the key, because I think one thing that, you've said a lot right there is, we look at screening movement in whatever way you screen it. Hopefully you all out there are doing, if you're a professional, some sort of movement screen to screen the fundamental movements. I know a lot of people look at hinging, push, pull, all the fundamental screening movement is key, because as you said, we can't just throw correctives out there and assume they're working, because you're probably moving poorly because of some other reason, whether it's your workout or your lifestyle or habits or whatever it is, and it changes. It's going to be changing based off of what you do this week. I may move great today. I hop on a plane, fly somewhere under a little stress, get a little dehydrated. My movements will be worse tomorrow or the next day. Right. And we got to consider that it is changing, have a little recipe, but understand it, because I think the one key thing here that gets lost, talking about screening movement, is awareness. Having this awareness and being able to either check yourself or as a professional be able to check someone.
All right, let me
find out where you are so you can make, as you just said, modifications. All right, let's take a quick break here to tell you about Simeo. Simeo is our holistic wellness platform designed to give you the tools and resources to assess, manage, and improve your clients' and patients' overall health and wellness. Go to Simeo.com to sign up for a free trial today. That's SYMMIO.com.
We got 2 new courses I think you'll like. One's a deep dive on mobility and one's a deep dive on stability. We really unpack that and show you how simple single corrective exercises aren't nearly as good as a meal of mobility assembled in a flow, in a set of stations. Do the same thing for stability. It's sort of a new way of looking at things, but it's that same old functional approach, just with nice packages that actually give you huge dividends. So let me make this really practical for everybody. All right, Lee, I've seen it happen. The Lee on Friday in the airport ain't limping, but I follow you out the airport because you're usually in more of a hurry than I am. So we're getting out of there and he's limping. What happens to your movement profile after being on your feet all weekend, not getting ready to move like you want, and then having to sit on a plane coast to coast? What movement pattern do you lose first?
I know, because just to give everybody, my history, I have a leg length discrepancy. Yep. I know it. I don't necessarily wear the insert that I should be wearing to create a little bit more symmetry.
And under a half inch, there's a debate whether you should or not. Over a half inch.
I'm right around a half an inch. Okay. Maybe a little bit under a half an inch. I'm right around there because I had a fracture.
Yep.
You've followed us. I broke my femur, of all places, back when I was 8 to 10. I don't even know, 8, 9 years old. So that's the reason I have that. So I know it's a problem. It's not a fake. It's not where your pelvis is off. It's a legit leg length.
And the type of fracture you got in your hip didn't rob you from the amount of flexion and extension you have in your deep squat. It did your adduction, abduction, and internal, external rotation. So you got a mismatched set of hips.
Right. That's where I've got the problem. So I'm very mobile. So I'm extremely mobile. So the first thing I lose on a typical weekend or a typical work day, if I'm not moving around, is my leg raise and toe touch.
Okay.
I can squat well. The shoulder mobility is good, but I've got some asymmetries. My lunge asymmetries there, but I'm a set of twos, maybe a two threes typically. So my movement screen is good, but I know when my toe touch is off, but I know how to fix it.
Exactly. And how long does it take you to get lined back up or leveled back up?
Less than 5 minutes.
Okay. So what I've been campaigning for the last couple of years, because I've heard all my life, we don't have time to do the correctives, is I said, listen, you know your weakest link. It's going to be in a hip hinge. And it's not necessarily because you got bad hips, you got a mismatched set of hips. So the leg raise is going to have an asymmetry and the toe touch is going to be limited by the tightest leg. Okay. So we see the hip hinge two different ways, off your feet and on your feet. That's a good definition of a mobility problem. It's consistently limited whether you do it with a loaded or unloaded spine. Now, there are some correctives that reset you, just like sitting on a plane for 6 hours upsets you. That means that Lee is actually managing his state of readiness, but his long-term risk is fairly low because as long as he doesn't do something out of the ordinary, you're pretty functional. And then whether it's a plane flight or you run a marathon, you're going to get out of whack for a little bit. A lot of people get a little bit out of whack for one reason or another, and then they go right back into their workout. And now they reinforce with the hammering and pounding and mileage and weight and plyos and pushing a sled and stuff like that. They're going into their workout saying, I'm going to dust this asymmetry off me. You're doing no such of a thing unless your warm-up is targeted at your weakest link. Might look like a corrective, but if your warm-up levels you up, you go into your workout symmetrical, balanced, and self-aware. And if you went to do your warm-up and your leg raise stayed tight, it didn't budge in 5 minutes, I got a feeling you might say, going to go a little slow today. Fit in maybe a little bit of walking, get on the treadmill for some stuff, but I'm going to keep it light and hit that corrective tomorrow. Oh, there it is. Now I'm back.
You're at the point why I think for us, we wanted to tackle this subject about corrective exercise, because it really has become, the pendulum has swung so far into corrective world that someone like Pavel gets extremely frustrated. Just get strong. But the problem is that, and he said it in that podcast that you referenced, is that you got to be mobile and you got to have the foundation first. So you got to set the foundation. And unfortunately, right now, people walking in off the street, and Gray, we caught the data last summer with people going through our self screen. Our profession is some of the worst.
Yes.
That have pain, that have movement pattern problems. So we got to set the baseline, create where you are. I think the point is now, it's not just about, you got to do 30 minutes of corrective exercise. I think what we've got to do as professionals is get away from always using that term to say, no, here's your workout.
Right.
Your workout should have everything baked in that you need.
And like you said, if you've got a few variables in your body that fluctuate, then the best way to elevate your awareness is to find a few drills or a warm-up that lets you know, are you the Friday version of Lee or are you the Sunday version of Lee? Because those are two different dudes.
So as the example, what I do, because I know my left hip is the tight one and the one that kind of goes out of whack, but it throws more problems in my right hip. So baked into my workout, and to your point, is half kneeling turns. Half kneeling turns, and when I get on my left knee down, when that is extremely difficult, I know that I'm probably not going to now I don't push myself much now anyway. Probably not going to push myself in certain positions, as opposed, so let's say that's Monday. Well, by Tuesday or Wednesday rolls around, it's not nearly as difficult to get in that position, do my turns. I can push myself a little further. So that's, and again, I'm older, I get it, but
now, let me dissect.
25-year-old Lee, it wouldn't be nearly as difficult. But that's not corrective exercise. That's my workout.
Right. Because It's to balance you out, get you aware. But here's the thing. If you notice a big asymmetry in a half kneeling turn, right? You're sort of pinning one hip in a position and seeing what your rotation is like, and it's obviously better on one side than the other. You gloss over that, go right into a deadlift, and you're going to be pressing on the ground about 60, 40, 70, 30.
Correct.
Because you are not aware that you have a stability difference. Your back has to make up for what your hip won't do on that side unless you regain that before you work out. So I don't ever see this long-term corrective thing unless you've got a huge anatomical bias or problem. I see you using those things that we would call a corrective as your self-aware warm-up, and some days you're going to, on new word now, calibrate quickly, and some days you're going to calibrate slowly. But it's within your ability, and usually there's a certain amount of recovery and rest that you got to go through before you can reset.
Well, you said something right there, and you said anatomical. And I want to touch on this because I know there has over the years been a lot of pushback or questions, and let's be honest, Greg, we've taken a lot of both over the years, and we welcome it all at this point because we've kind of been through the meat grinder and we come out of the other side. On our movement screen is standardized. Now, you've got to standardize a movement screen in order to make it reliable, period. And the reason you want to make it reliable is so you can ensure you get the right results every time to make sure when you go back and retest, are you making progress or not? So it's got to be reliable. That being said, some of the criticism has been, well, Lee, what if I've got an anatomical problem? You know, I think there seemed to be like for 2 years, everybody talked about the Celtic hip. Well, you can't squat deep or you can't get a 3 on the squat because you got a Celtic hip. And I saw something the other day. Well, Lee, what about somebody who has long femurs? You know, you got a short person, you got a tall person, and what about them? You can't expect them to get the same squat. But what's the point of the screen? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. We just need to know. Well, and I'm not going to force a person because I've screened people who are over 7 foot. I've screened people who are really, really short and all in between. And I don't go in assuming just because they have, long femurs, short femurs, Celtic hips, because I don't know. Well, and that's the whole point of finding out using a screen as a filter. Just because you've got those anatomical limitations or you're set up maybe not to do it, maybe you can.
Well, let me take it back. We had this discussion when Pavel invited me to start doing FMS type stuff at the Russian Kettlebell Challenge at the RKC, CKFMS, and we were literally trying to blend these corrective strategies into a workout, but not lose the workout in the process. I wish it had been more successful than it was, but we were working with a lot of broken people at the time. And we would get to the squat station, and some people who consider themselves very, very strong squatters didn't do very well on an overhead deep squat, which is nothing like lifting weights. It's simply expressing mobility in the shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles whilst demonstrating stability in the torso simultaneously. And it's the last thing we try to fix in the movement screen if it's dysfunctional. So I'd get somebody over there at the squat station and they couldn't break parallel even with a heel lift. Now, this is a strong person who breaks parallel with 300 pounds on their back. But they're not breaking parallel with their hands over their head, even though they got a heel lift. And we start getting into this long femur, torso relationship argument. And I'm like, whoa. You got a 1 on your leg raise. You had an asymmetry on your shoulders, and you got an asymmetry on your lunge. Before I start saying the reason you got a 1 on the squat's your extra long femur, why don't you go back and clean up some of the fundamental patterns that are poisoning the well of an overhead deep squat?
But let's take that example, Gray, because even in this discussion about long femurs, Celtic hips, all that, if that is the case and they can't squat, they get a 1 on the squat, which is mean you can't squat even with the heel lift, which is pretty poor. The first thing that tells me is they shouldn't squat with load until they get a little bit better.
That goes back to the protect. So the reason your squat's never going to get better is you're going into the squat rack with Lee Burton's Sunday hip, not Lee Burton's Friday hip.
Correct.
strengthening an asymmetry, a mobility problem, and wondering why it doesn't go away with a few minutes of stretching or a foam roll. And I really...
And that might be okay at a 25-year-old Lee, but a much older Lee, it can become problematic.
No, and I'm really more so talking to the pros out there about the way we take care of ourselves. I mean, if you're a chef, you got to eat the food you cook.
But we proved it this summer. We proved, and we proved it by going around and doing our lecture this summer. We had everybody go through our self screen, our functional wellness screen, real time. And 70% of professionals were in the high to moderate risk for musculoskeletal injury. High to moderate risk, 70%.
And I think one of the things that elevates that risk for those of us who show up at Perform Better conferences and try to stay active, and we're in the movement industry, that we're more active probably than the clients and patients that we have. But it doesn't seem like we're any more functional. So that increases exposure under a dysfunctional umbrella, which means we're probably, I mean, if you drive more than somebody else, you're exposed to more potential accidents. If you have inferior equipment and poor driving skills, that's going to compound that.
Which goes back to, are you training appropriately?
Yes. So what if we use the movement screen and correctives did not exist? Then if you got ones on movements, I wouldn't load them. And if you got twos on movements, I would say, I wonder, can I do anything to make this better? And if you got threes on movements, that's where you can get a lot of your metabolic work done.
And if you've got, I mean, let's be honest, if I'm a 20-year-old or really where we got to start as 18 high school athletes, there's no reason for a 17 or 18-year-old to have pain or a one on any of these tests.
We see them all the time, and the percentage has gone from about 20% when we were doing the first couple of years of screening with you as the head athletic trainer to about 30% right now, according to most of the screens that we get an opportunity to do.
So this whole thing is about trying to decrease the emphasis on corrective exercise. So I like what you just said there, Gray. Let's forget corrective exercise. You've got an 18-year-old who gets a one on multiple movement patterns, meaning they are extremely dysfunctional and a couple of zeros. The first question I'm going to ask that 7-year-old, what are you doing? What are you doing to create these problems? Well, and many times it is the training or a previous injury or something in their environment that is creating that problem. And until we address that, the correctives are only going to help so much.
So using the screen to truly question the things people are motivated about, like their workout and the way they take care of themselves, is really where I come in. The corrective, guys, just demonstrates the plasticity. This system's ready to budge. This system's going to take a minute. It's okay. They're both good answers. If you have a lot of rest and recovery, nutritional problems, metabolic problems, your tissues can only change but so fast.
So let's put this in application form, Gray, and I'll give you my story of where, again, a lot of what you and I assume, doesn't, I mean, we're in our own little world a lot of times, so we can't make assumptions there everywhere else. But I went in and screened a Division I basketball program early on in this whole process. And strength coach at the time said, my guys are having a lot of back pain about halfway through practice. And, why don't you come in and screen them? Came in and went through the screen, and squats were ones. Leg raises predominantly were asymmetrically ones. And everything else, let's just assume everything else was pretty good. Nothing really out of the norm. But those were both the problem. That was a problem. It was like glaring. Like when I put them in a spreadsheet and laid them out and kind of walked through, okay, one's on the squat and pretty much one's on the leg raise. Asymmetries for the most part. So the assumption is, well, Lee, we got to fix the leg raise. Let's give him some correctives. And that's what he says. Okay, we got to go fix these leg raises. So, but that's not necessarily what needs to happen. One, my first question was, why are all these guys ones on the squat? And again, long femurs and they're tall. I'm like, no, because you got some other guys that are ones on the squat too. So I'm not buying that. So what they were doing is they were doing heavy squats, but they're doing quarter squats or not even to parallel squat, not even parallel. Quarter squats, and they were doing heavy. quite often. That was about it, right? That was kind of the main lift they're doing. They do bench press and do some other stuff, but that was really the only thing they're doing in the lower body. And without going too much into the weeds on this, the coach, the head coach, loved and wanted all of them to squat, wanted all of them to squat heavy, but did not want them going past quarter squats or just around quarter squats. Okay, fine. So our train of thought would be, all right, let's stop squatting. Or if you're going to squat and you got to squat, go deep. They can't yet. So instead of me going through and saying, okay, you got to do these correctives, I was like, hey, just lay off the squats for a week, start deadlifting, and do half kneeling chops and lifts. Because my brain was going in, all right, they got some again, back pain halfway through practice. So they probably got some overactive hip flexors. So instead of going through and changing up everything and creating a whole laundry list of crap they got to do, half kneeling chops, deadlifts. So I go back in a month and rescreen this same team. Movement screens were a little better. I'm not going to tell you they were dramatically better.
But you weren't doing correctives.
Wasn't doing any correctives. But he said nobody had back pain. He said, Lee, back pain, these guys don't complain about their backs at all anymore. They did some foam rolling along the way, half kneeling chops and lifts. That's it.
You know, that's neat that you brought that up. Huberman actually.
There's no corrective exercises in there.
Right. Huberman brought up, well, this is one more compliment to Pavel. Huberman brought up the fact that he was now squatting with a belt and a lever, sort of get your spine out of it, almost like a standing leg press, right? You're just lifting a weight, but just suspended from a weight belt hanging in front of you. To not have any compressive forces on the spine. Pavel's point is the whole body should be stressed as a unit. There'll always be a weakest link, but sort of spot training lower body, upper body is a good recipe for overshooting or undershooting or misappropriating something. So stay functional. Pavel's solution to that is one that I had forgotten about, and I've been playing around with it for years, but it wasn't part of my initial training, so I don't go back to it. When I have somebody that doesn't squat well and they still want to squat, we do a thing called a Zercher squat. And imagine just holding a much lighter weight than you would squat on your shoulders in the crooks of your elbow, okay? When you squat down, that weight is going plumb right into your hip crease. It sets you right back on your heels, and you can't round your back when you're carrying it. Now, instantly, most people try to go too heavy, but it's such a self-correcting squat that this is about as much as you can squat with perfect mechanics. And I can watch people who get ones on the FMS and go to a Zercher squat with what I would consider a very lightweight to squat with, and their mechanics are perfect. Now, they're just as tired as if they'd had heavyweight up top rounding their back, because the energy expenditure is about the same. But the energy expenditure in the Zercher squat is almost 50-50 stability and strength and posture type thing. Whereas it's all just how much can I shrug this weight up on the back. So even though I think that we'll always have a piece of equipment that will get you out of the responsibility for stabilizing your spine, a good strength coach has already figured out an alternative. I love what you did. Let's just delete the squat because I can't be here to watch you and I got to protect you from what's going to happen there. So let's go to self-limiting exercises like chops and lifts and deadlifts, which you can't really screw up. Secondly, if you're only squatting in the upper ranges of your squat, you're using all hamstring and no glute. The glute doesn't even wake up till you're down around parallel. So we're training tight hamstrings and then wondering why we got a 1 on the leg raise. So without reinforcing this constant unnecessary pretension in the hamstrings, which is going to hurt your stride, if anything, mess up your speed and your jumping, we've got to keep your glutes alive. Well, the deadlift is going to hip hinge enough to get the glutes, going. The chop and lift is going to add that core stability. Pavel split the needle and said, if you got to hug that weight close with a Zercher squat and go.
So the point of all this, is don't just think you got to add corrective exercise into someone's program to quote unquote fix them. The whole goal the whole goal of doing a movement screen is to give you some guidelines, what the person can and can't do. And then from there, you design the workout to improve their weaknesses, movement weaknesses, delete things that they don't really need or it's not going to help them. That's really it. Now, baked in and sprinkled in all that, you could call them correctives if you need to.
Well, yeah. And really, I think it's the approach, and this has all happened on our watch, so we all got to own this. But the consumer, the fit-minded person, the person that wants to confront wellness or even be a weekend warrior in athletics and get a little fit because of it, they approach the exercise space like a buffet. Oh, I think I'm going to push a little sled today, and then I might go over in the corner and beat on the tractor tire with a sledgehammer. And man, they got a rock climbing wall. I'm going to go do some of that. What are Indian clubs? Oh, I'm not doing that. I mean, but there's really no purpose in what people are doing. They're not charting their course. And if you've got a few dysfunctional patterns, that should rule the day. And if you don't, then what do you want to do? Because there is an energy system that would be appropriate for you to train, whether that be intervals or endurance or strength or something like that. But Pavel's got a new book coming out called Greasing the Groove. And literally it's about, if you want to get stronger, do a movement competently, frequently, and not to any degree of fatigue whatsoever. So if you're practicing pistols, right? Don't try to bang out 30. Try a pistol and then go do something. Try a pistol. Now, that doesn't really fit into people's workout, but it easily fits into your office day. All right? If you want to do more push-ups, do 5 push-up sessions throughout the day, but not to any point of soreness or fatigue whatsoever.
Quality,
do 6 perfect ones.
Quality over quantity, which also is move well before you move often. So, Gray, I'm going to give you just a few here to kind of wrap this up a little bit. If I tell you someone does everything well on the movement screen, except the lunge, what would you have them do?
I would do if you've got a cable column or something, I love half kneeling chops and lifts, but I also think half kneeling presses with a kettlebell or a dumbbell. But you could also do like double arm dumbbell presses, but do something with your upper body in a very, very narrow and well-positioned lower body stance, and you will gain all the stability you need, because the lunge ain't ugly at the top, it's ugly at the bottom.
But how would you train my lower body?
Wouldn't have to, because I think the first...
Well, what if I want to have a lower body strength?
We'd be doing some deadlifts, because I wouldn't do anything to reinforce that bad lunge.
Hence, reiterate what I said. I said you had a bad lunge, didn't say the person had bad anything else. So everything else is okay, which means everything was open to do.
Right.
Squatting, deadlifting. You just don't want to split squat them or lunge them.
That's the one, in physical therapy, I saw the one default move that a lot of physical therapists, because they didn't have a weightlifting background, we would get the young male and female athlete with the knee pain. And whether it's jumper's knee or they're going through a growth spurt, Osgood Slaughter's, whatever. Kids are going to go through knee pain if you put enough miles on them. Everybody's trying to work around the knee pain and make them strengthen. So we're doing leg press, hamstring curls, lunges, and squats. It all hurts them. It doesn't hurt them to do deadlifts because you're not moving the knee that much. And guess what? That femur, that weak knee position when the knees cave in and they're squinting in at the knees, rotation of the femur is controlled by the glute, not the quad. So we would literally, and I remember back in the clinic days, we'd get all our knee patients and they'd learn to deadlift, and Keith Fields was out in the gym, better deadlifter than all of us, so we knew he was on the job. And a week later, we're not taping knees, we're not stretching quads, because they leveled the pelvis, and then they started strengthening their knee again.
That's not corrective exercise.
It's not corrective exercise.
That is taking
it's
the
functional exercise.
It's functional exercise, and that's the whole point. All right, let me give you one more. Person's got, most common thing we see, one's on shoulder mobility, which means they do not have good upper body mobility. Leg raise is good. Everything else is good. They just got ones on shoulder mobility.
Wow. I really like just exploring the Turkish getup, but I don't want anybody to go do a Turkish getup right now. I want you to lay flat on the ground and just put the weight in the held position and just see if you can rotate your neck comfortably, because a lot of people are already lifting that weight with their neck. Suck that shoulder blade down and in. Now, a way that you're going to learn where that shoulder needs to be is just doing simple farmer's carries. And I've done these with a lot of NFL quarterbacks that got this huge thing going in their shoulder, and they were chasing the problem with all these moves instead of just racking that posture and getting that scapula nice and stable so you can move the shoulder again. But imagine a half Turkish get up. find a nice slot. Most people don't want to lay there and hold that weight a long time. Is that a stability problem or strength problem? So just laying there and getting some awareness at 90 degrees, because if you're laying flat on your back, is your neck supple? Can you rotate your shoulder? Can you rotate up to your elbow? Can you come back down? I have seen that yield huge dividends on people who have tight shoulders from training inappropriately.
What else would you do? Because that's one exercise. I want to break a sweat, Greg. Come on, buddy.
Oh, I'd put you on some Indian clubs and start with some low swings that are within your appropriate range of motion and let you dump some of that unnecessary tension. And I'll give you one more that's a piece of magic for me when I'm working with somebody and I want to see how much of your shoulder problem is just inappropriate tension and how much of it is a lot of time in a bad position. And we'll do the symmetry flow, which looks like a toe touch progression, but I got you doing an arm switch.
That's not going to make me break a sweat. Could I squat? Could I lunge? Could I deadlift?
Oh yeah, you can do that.
Right, any of
just
that's
don't
appropriate.
go overhead because you're going to compensate.
Patterns?
Huh?
Would you have me doing any crawling pattern?
Sure.
So all of that's on the table. Point being, you're going to do one or two activities.
But what I would do is, as I were testing my theories of which one fit your break a sweat and my fix your function, is after doing said activity, bear crawl, half get up or whatever, are your shoulders getting better or worse? Because I've seen a lot of people do something like the Bretzel, stretch out their shoulders, they finish the workout, they're right back to where they were. They reinforce the problem with the workout that they chose.
The point being is what you're describing, and what the main point of this conversation is, you should have certain activities baked into the workout that should be addressing the biggest need.
And I've found in most workouts, unless people are horribly jacked up, there's enough space to do all the corrective stuff you need in your warm-up and in your active rest.
Because if you're doing the right thing, you're eliminating things that they don't need. You should be removing certain activities. That a person who's a one on shoulders, first thing that person should not be doing is anything overhead.
Right.
Overhead activities should be off the table. But there are a lot of the other stuff they can do, so you're eliminating that.
No, as a matter of fact, really learning how to deadlift, close your armpit down and engage your lat will actually help you dump inappropriate tension in your shoulder. Once again, if we go back and gain scapular stability, you will get glenohumeral mobility. It's called a joint by joint argument.
And I think that's the whole point is use your movement screen as a simple tool to give you more guidelines and guidance. It shouldn't be there to say, oh, I've got to do 30 minutes of corrective exercises. No, you've got to do a 45-minute workout.
I think our most positive experiences working with strength coaches in professional and collegiate athletics is letting the movement screen give them the ammunition they need to actually just say, hey, let's not do that station anymore. Let's not use that equipment anymore. Let's free up some floor space and do this now. And so the ones that didn't just reactively stick to their old workout and then add our correctives are the ones that we actually learned from, because I said, hey, we started doing this. You and I became better strength coaches watching how they would manipulate the workout, yield a higher functional result with no extra stretching.
Now, I'm also going to just, call it what it is. We have courses that are corrective exercise courses.
Right.
But when you put those things together, Gray, it's simply showing you these are activities you need to be doing to fix the problem, which should only be part of what they need to be doing.
And let me tell you the script that I took with me this summer. Me and a couple of the guys on the screen team went in and we were having a good time with the Chicago Bears in the weight room right about the same time they were on HBO doing Hard Knocks. I was using my knowledge of corrective strategies to engage with an athlete and prove to them that their problem was easily manageable and it wasn't long term. So when I would change somebody's shoulder mobility or leg raise or help them learn to engage a little bit better in the lunge or whatever I did, I used that corrective to buy street cred and to let them think, this is not a big problem. This is not a medical problem. I'm a PT, but I'm helping you design a better strength conditioning program. So showing them that this corrective works, but also changing this in your workout gives you the exact same thing.
how could it not? Look how quick your body's willing to change with me just doing this. And so I use my knowledge of correctives not as a long-term play, as a short-term buy-in so I could see how quick you're going to change and how much load I want to put on this. And if you're changing slow with a corrective, I've really got to lower the load a lot, and it's going to take a little bit longer. Those correctives are going to be a good feedback loop for you. They may actually become one of your exercises. But if you correct quickly, I promise you I can find something in your workout I'd like to delete and something in your workout I should amplify and keep you right there.
Right. And I think that hopefully is one of the biggest takeaways here. When you do a movement screen and you identify an issue, the first thing shouldn't be, oh, I got to give you this corrective. Your first thought should be, okay, what are they doing that's creating this problem? What are the exercises that this person should not be doing? Those are the first two things that should automatically go in your mind. Why do they have this problem? What are they doing? Maybe it's in their environment. Maybe it's their training. And what exercises should they not do? And then the third thing would be, all right, here's the activity I think I can give them that'll make them better.
You know, we overcomplicate so many things. People who are chronically dehydrated, they don't need a dehydration drink. They simply need to really drink more water. They just do. Yeah, when somebody shows up with a vitamin C deficiency, we could easily put them on a supplement. We could say, have you seen the sun in 7 days? Because 15 minutes of exposure on your upper arms is about all you need. So I'm not saying go out and get burned and piss off your dermatologist. I'm saying vitamin D occurs naturally in a natural situation, and it shows deficiency in an unnatural situation. So your workout could be an unnatural situation for the movement screen you're posting right now. And that vicious back and forth, jack myself up, look for a corrective, spend twice as much time on foam roll, start getting obsessed on soft tissue. If you're well hydrated, well nourished, and well rested and have a good workout, you don't need a lot of body work. And I'm not trying to put body work people out of work. I'm a body work person. There's always going to be enough work. But me personally, if I can't work out without foam rolling or getting a massage once a week, I honestly think I'm doing something wrong. I just do. So I don't know if we did a really good commercial for our corrective exercise courses or not, but if you've already got these in your account, if you've already seen these, what I really want you guys to do is lean in, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to confront the leg raise in 4 different body positions, from laying on your back to standing. I don't want you to do that full progression. I want you to pick one of 3 exercises in each of the 4 positions and find out which one gives you the most insight and them the most awareness. Play with that for a minute and watch how quick they change, and then see how that would influence the way you would work them out. So I've given you, 5 different courses on 5 different movement patterns, how to correct, but I don't expect you to be there long. I expect you to run up and down that musical scale of movement buffet, find one that does what we talked about, does for your hip. Let them own that. That becomes their warm-up. That becomes their cool down. It doesn't need to become their exercise. That's basically what they would do on active rest.
Right, and that's the whole point of us trying to have this conversation is we got to find 1 or 2 things that is going to get them out of where they are. Because again, movements of behavior, lifestyle's going to get in the way. My hips are going to get locked up every now and then. I should understand when do I understand that's out? And 2, give me the right recipe to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's not that corrective exercises shouldn't be part of our nomenclature, but I think we've kind of watered it down and overused it to a point where it's now almost looked at in a lot of professionals as like, I'm not doing that. We got to get you in there and we got to get after it. Well, if you get after it too much, you're going to create a problem. So I think the idea behind movement screening is to first and foremost figure out what the person cannot do, but what the person can do. And by having that knowledge, especially if you find some things that they have really pain or some dysfunctions in, alter their workout, alter their plan, maybe even alter their lifestyle. And that's a little bit better approach than automatically trying to go and pull this corrective out. So I think that's a good way to kind of wrap this up, Gray, is, we got here with the movement screen and using correctives as a way to fix things. But I think even early on in our careers, that was not the main objective of a movement screen, to figure out what correctives to give somebody.
No, and I can't recommend the Huberman Labs podcast with Pavel Setsulin. Really made me remember that my definition of function includes strong, and Pavel's definition of strong includes function. And he does one of the most eloquent talks of gaining strength in such a reasonable way that I've heard in a long time. And it's literally like basically taking all his books and distilling them down into a quick lecture. So I can't recommend it more highly. And he's just got a lot of good advice in there, and it lines right up because it yields functional results. So, strength and function aren't working against each other. They work together in the best of ways. So
Thanks for joining us, guys.
thank you.
If you want to learn more about today's podcast or dive deeper into functional movement systems information, check out some of the resources and offers we're providing in the description. That will do it for this episode of the Movement Podcast.
Thanks for listening. And if you liked what you heard, please take a minute and subscribe and review.
If you want to learn more about our system and take the next step in your own movement journey,
Visit us at movementpod.com.
until next time, be sure to first move well,
Then move often.